It's Wednesday, November the 24th. It's John Mackett here, Eamon McFadden and Declan Kerr with this week's podcast. 4 more weeks to go to Christmas time. Christmas shopping all done, Eamon?
Well, started.
Good.
Started, I have to say.
I'm finished.
You're finished with your...
I haven't thought about it. We're looking at a number of issues beyond the paper before we actually get into the nitty gritty of it. Ronan Glynn, the nation's Deputy Medical Officer, he has stated today that they have never said, NEFIT has never said that schools are a safe environment, and he says what we've said is that they are a lower risk. Now, given the incidence of COVID in schools, it's quite shocking. They're much more than a lower risk, and the reality is this here, that this is the first time I've heard this lower risk category mentioned. The headlines across the last 18 months has been about schools being a safe environment.
Yeah.
Parents always doubted that to a great extent. But they're no longer a safe environment. And I've heard parents saying, that in the last couple of days that the government should look at this very seriously and give schools and colleges a clean break of a month over the Christmas period to see there's that breaker.
Circuit breaker.
Make a big difference. And that they close the schools a week or 2 weeks before the normal Christmas holidays,
Yeah, and it's a huge issue in national schools.
Yeah.
They can't get substitute teachers.
And it wouldn't upset the end of the year if it did have an impact.
Yeah,
but why should it? Sure, the schools were closed in 2020 for very long periods, and I don't think it really upset anything. Children are really quick learners, like at that stage.
Leaving certain things like that.
I don't know what the instance like in secondary schools or universities.
It seems to be the indications are that the biggest issue currently is in national schools, because there is a level of vaccination at secondary and
college level on that.
There's no level at all.
Yeah.
Because apparently it's going to be the new year before the under 12s begin to get the vaccination. I don't know if that's yet approved by the
What the uptake of that'll be is hard to know as well.
Yeah.
That could be very questionable at this point, but we're not making any great headway with COVID. Given that the numbers, they're at a very high level, they're at a very worrying level, and just talking to the general public, COVID is back as the main talking point. Not that it was ever that far away, but people are just cancelling Christmas functions, Christmas parties,
all
Christmas,
left, right and centre.
all that right, left and centre.
Hospitality's taking another knock again.
Hospitality's taking a knock, but it had to, because the public is going to drive that agenda. Now, whether nightclubs and that are taking a big hit, I'm not quite certain, because I haven't been talking to anybody that's been out in a nightclub in the last couple of weeks, but I know that a number of weeks back when they opened first, they were fairly well attended. I don't know if the curfew at midnight has had any big impact, because
it was very early yet, I suppose. I suppose it's only, what was it, last Friday? Was it last?
The 24th. 24th.
Yeah.
22nd of
relate to the figures just yet then.
Declan, this might be more into your comfort zone. The World Cup bid for 2030 came up today at a Narrative Committee attended by the government chief whip. He's the junior minister for sport, Jack Chambers. And Fianna Fáil Senator Shane Cassells. He says the government should give consideration to spending money on a signature stadium, because he emphasises the fact that the renovations at Croke Park and Park y Cueve and all this kind of thing, or the Viva Stadium, are between 35 years old come 2030. But the government is going to spend 500,000 next year, and probably a similar amount over the next 3 or 4 years, in an attempt to sort of in this joint bid that we've joined with the UK in an attempt to get the World Cup here to this part of Europe. Do you see a hope in hell of that happening?
Well, I can't, in relation to the bid overall, I don't know about that, but I think another stadium in Ireland to boost that, and the cost of that, and the whole current climate that we're in, I think that's a bit pie in the sky.
It seems that way to me. Just reading that on the headlines there, it's very easy grabbing headlines these days, because there isn't an awful lot of news outside of COVID and the global warming thing seems to have gone off the radar of media interest, given that COP26 ended quite flatly in Glasgow. I mean, are we justified? I mean, 500,000. I mean, good God, they wouldn't want to be running a professional football team because they'd be paying that in weekly wages.
But
2 millionaire Premier players.
bidding for the World Cup, I suppose that's one thing. But I mean, in terms of planning to invest in a major stadium, a major new state-of-the-art stadium, it sounds good, but I think it's pretty far off the mark.
What's the status now, if you know about Casement Park in Belfast? Has that got planning permission, or has that stadium been rebuilt, or do we know?
No, it got planning permission, but I think there's still issues with there's still issues there that are still not resolved.
And there are lots of issues around the residents and parking and stuff like that.
There are still issues going on with that. I've seen that in recent times, so that's not put to bed yet. In terms of the Casement Park going ahead,
They need more than just one stadium. Like if they're going to make a joint bid with the UK, they're going to have to include all those parks across Wales and Scotland and like the north if they have.
If we had 4 or 5 big stadiums like that, at least you could guarantee that Garth Brooks could play one of them a week.
Well, Gareth could sell out a month of concerts if he did build it.
He could fill one of them for a week every year.
They wouldn't have to be all played at
because Ireland's the biggest place where he has an audience. I mean, that tickets on sale yesterday for his first 2 concerts, they're long since gone. They're gone.
They're warning now is the black market. They're going to go sky high.
The story is that they're gone before the booking office opened yesterday morning. Apparently, it was more difficult to get a Gareth Brooks ticket than it would have been to get a PCR test, and things have got much worse today.
Well, that's very true.
We're looking then this lottery. We're not lottery fans, are we? I haven't done the lottery in 20 years, I don't think. For no particular reason, I've just no interest in it. But
no, I wouldn't be in the habit of it at all.
Deputy Mayor in Durkin of Fine Gael has done a lot of running on this one here, because the national lottery was given away by the government for was it a 30-40 year period. I know that we can't get it back for maybe another 20 years.
Not familiar.
But we no longer have any control over it. We have sold it to a consortium that amongst the other things that they do is the Canadian Teachers Benevolent Fund is benefiting that. That's the company that's now running it. There's nothing wrong with the running of it or the management of it, but why has it been done outside? I know why it was given away. It was given away at the time of the property crash that we just seen. I think it was a sum of about 400 million. It's very hard to imagine that I think we sold it we gave away the lease of it for 20 years for 400 million or thereabouts.
There's a business case behind it.
The business case, the business case was quite simple. We're skint, we're broke, we need the money.
There you go, someone could see an opportunity.
Let's get rid of the lottery. But I mean, given that it was always a massive money maker, though I still think that we're getting back about 30 cent in the euro for charitable causes. Is that enough? I mean, does it justify selling it that cheaply or leasing it that cheaply? But Neil Martin is talking about the possibility, he's agreeing with the fact that perhaps we should have a regulator to examine it. Mind you, that will not help an awful lot because it is leased for a specific period, and no matter what we do, we're not going to get it back. It probably was a mistake the very first day. I mean, it was like selling the family silver. It was one of the big money makers that we had.
But really, is there much point in talking about it at all? In the sense that there is a contract there that's there for a long time. What interference or what can the government do, or are they? I don't think they can do very much.
I think it's public awareness has increased because it's gone for about 20. I think the 5th of June or thereabouts is the last time it was won. Somebody in Galway won about 2.5 million on the jackpot. I think it's 27 weeks it has rolled over at that figure of just over 19 million. I don't know.
It's much harder to win the jackpot than the amount of numbers.
They added X amount of balls and that increased the odds.
And they just made a balls out of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to move on to Eamon, to you. It's a bit of an inside of the Tribune, there's funding for the Carragher Downies Greenway. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's a project now linking. I suppose it's one of the more scenic drives down there, uninterrupted run all the way from Carragher down into Downies, really, which is a fine spot. And then but it's a project that's been kind of mooted now for about 10 or 11 years, of the Carragher to Downies Greenway. Funny, for a long time it was just referred to as the pedestrian or cycle path, but the Greenways is the kind of the common
Greenway
parlance now.
is the new sexy term now. I mean, Greenway, it's hardly going to be a blue way or a white way or my way.
A sandy way, but anyway. But that was going on, and that actually got shot down. It was last year that got shot down. It had to go straight down Board Planala, and there was hopes that the planning would be granted. There was some complications there, that it would go certain areas or special areas of conservation and that type of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
And it was a real setback to them at that point, because I think that they were really envisaging they'd have to go back to the drawing board on the whole project.
Last week, John O'Donnell confirmed that the planning permission had gone through, and things were going to be flying. I heard him on radio earlier on today, and there's just very big things happening
last
around
Friday.
there.
The word came through.
This is probably the biggest of them all, really. From an environmental point of view, from a public point of view, but from a tourism point of view,
from an amenity point of view,
it's going to be
tourists,
a fantastic walkway from Downies back up to Carragher. Except at some point, somewhere there, halfway through it, you're going to have to cross the road.
Yeah.
It can't be all on the one side of the road just because of the layout and the design of that place there. I would imagine, just looking at that road there, somewhere probably there in the vicinity of the golf course there.
Kind of down in Roy Junction or somewhere you may switch over, but it's
well, you're going to have to switch over at some point, at least once, because you still have another junction above that takes you up there beyond the to the right hand side of the church, out onto the main road. So there's a bit of work to be done there. We were just discussing that last night with public representatives.
There's a bit of funding already secured for it. That was all kicked the can.
Well, that's a nice amount of funding there. It's in the estimates, this year's estimates, which is kind of getting underway tomorrow morning. And there's a figure of 95,000, almost 96,000.
Yeah.
And that's a big bonus. And Joe McHugh has welcomed that.
There's a lot of work around that. I think the very first, it was 10 years ago since we kind of had a public meeting on that. So there's been a huge amount of groundwork done in that time. So it's good to see that they finally got there. So,
Declan, we're going to move on to this Micah story. Councillor Frank McBrearty has done a lot of running on the Micah story. Particularly, he probably was the first to call for a public inquiry, take a legal case, take a high court case as a test case. And public opinion is coming more and more round to that way of thinking. Frank McBrearty and the McBrearty family themselves are engaged in processing their own High Court case. It takes time, but it may not be far away before they can lodge papers. But it was raised in the Dáil yesterday afternoon by Deputy Thomas Pringle, and he was calling for a public inquiry, and the Taoiseach kind of sidelined that, simply saying that could take years and years. Of course, if other inquiries or tribunals of inquiry or anything to go by, that could be true, but there has to be a faster way than that. So really, unless you can process it through the court on behalf of a group of Micah affected homeowners.
Frank has been saying that from the outset, almost way back in May, June time, in this paper, and I suppose processing it through, taking a case through the High Court. He did call for a public investigation as well, but he certainly, the redress scheme and the way that's going, things are tending towards, it's taken a long time, and we're still not, well, I think next Tuesday, John, is there some talk of Darragh O'Brien?
Darragh O'Brien was on the hard shoulder there just after 4:15 or 4:30 talking about it, and he hopes to bring a memo to Cabinet next Tuesday, presuming that all the legal issues are fully clear, but he seemed quite confident that he will be bringing it to Cabinet. But he was being pushed hard on it, as he will be on those programmes. There's going to be full redress, and he just kept reiterating the point. It's going to be a substantial improvement on previous schemes. And like at the end of the day, the devil's going to be in the detail on this one, because the government will not want to lose anything here, and that applies to both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. It's hard to see them coming up with something that's going to simply say full redress, but talking to a number of Oireachtas members, they're of the view that a scheme will come forward that lacks that clarity of detail, in that it passes it on to the housing agency or something like that, and it'll be in the hands of the civil servants, and you'll not know what you're entitled to until you actually are approved either for or what you asked for by those officials. So it could make a grey area even greyer, but it's something that's got to happen pretty certain, because Christmas is coming up in the not too distant future. But we're moving on a little bit. One other issue we're just dealing with there, Declan, is that Councillor Mandy Kelly has been raising issues about the bridges in Meanoroy, and there was recent accidents there and all this kind of thing.
Yeah, there's two bridges there, the main bridge, and there's a smaller bridge down at the bottom of the hill there, and both of them have been causing problems. The big bridge is falling away, and it's a main artery into Letterkenny from places like Glenties and Ardra, and Councillor Kelly is extremely worried about it. They did raise it a couple of months ago in relation to sourcing funding. Nothing has happened since, and then there's an issue too with the smaller bridge traffic. A lot of accidents in and around there, and landowners as well as people driving along that road are very frustrated, because there are a lot of damage been done, even to fencing and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, what we don't know, we're trying to establish, is this a county road, a regional road, or just a secondary road?
Yeah.
Because, like, for as long as I can remember, these two bridges have been given major difficulties, and they have not undergone any real improvements.
Yeah.
All that really seems to have happened there, from what I'm told, is that when the bridge is clattered by a truck or a crash, the stonework is repaired. But he is raising that there in the public domain, so we'll just keep an eye on that one, because we want to move on to the Creasle View, Eamon.
Creasle View, it's the 21st edition of it now. I suppose subdued. Normally they'll have a wee launch event and all now, but they can't have it because of COVID. That's the second year that's been the case. But this is fresh off the press, and now it's going to be in the shops now in the next day or so, and that looks back in it, and it's the usual sort of gather up of news and views occurred in the local
community events and photographs,
sports and all that,
very heavily. I mean, it is based on the community, it's for the community, and as always we say, it's just an ideal Christmas present that you can send to anyone, because you can read it the whole year round.
Full of nostalgia, full of great photographs and all that as well, that always keeps it going. There's a few lovely pieces in there as well, and there's a particularly nice tribute there to the late Martin O'Donnell, which is penned by John McLafferty, which is very much worth a read. But there's that and much more as well.
Right.
Bits and pieces. That'll be out now.
Rose Diver from Melton.
Yeah.
Fascinating woman. Probably the life and soul and the heartbeat of Melton for almost 100 years.
One of the most well-known figures in Melton, and I took the opportunity to do a piece with her on the life and times. It's certainly a very interesting story. Rose born in on Church Street. We talked to her then about working in Guy's boarding house, and the tragedy of her sister Mary passing away and leaving 3 young children who Rose took on the responsibility of looking after Edward, Father Anthony and Rose Maria. And just going on then, just to talk in generally about life, Rose has been there. She's seen everything in Ramelton, and she's a very, very proud woman, very proud of the town and everything about it.
It's across 3 pages of this week's Tribune, so I hope you... There's great old pictures in that feature, fantastic pictures in it. There's a very evocative picture there of Church Street back in the day, many, many years ago. It probably wasn't even tarred at that point, but I just wanted to take a quick look at the lead story. Rates and the local property tax, they add 40%, or they provide 40% of the revenue budget. This year the revenue budget meeting is on this week, and there is a very, very big increase in, given the circumstances that's in it here. I think it's up by about 4.5%.
Just seen that, John. It's interesting in the times that's in it that the expenditure is up by that much.
Yeah, well, like John McLaughlin says that The budget he has described as a very challenging budget in the midst of the effects of COVID-19, but he says it's one that can be made to work because it will cover the basic and essential activities and will also provide money to allow further developments. So let's see how that goes tomorrow, but we're leaving it at that. We're also on the shelves in the shops in the next couple of hours, and you can also follow us on social media. So from all of us here at the Tribune for this week, thanks for listening.